Internal Revenue Service IRS tax news. Filing payroll taxes electronically makes good business sense. IRS Tax Tip 2021-86, June 16, 2021. Running a business with employees can be hard work. One way business owners can make things a little easier on themselves is by filing payroll and employment taxes electronically. Payroll can be a complex system to be filling out. Also note that some of the payroll tax laws may have been adjusted and changing over time as we deal with the COVID-19 and the related economic conditions. Also note that when you're dealing with payroll, it's one of those things generally that you want to get right the first time rather than having to adjust it. In other words, oftentimes, if something goes wrong with payroll, you may not pick it up till you do the quarterly payroll taxes, possibly at the end of the month, or even the yearly information like the W-2s and the 940 at the end of the year, at which time it becomes a lot more difficult to kind of fix things, or can be, depending on what the problem is. It's better to get it right the first time generally, and if filing electronically can help to do that, then that could be a good thing to do. It could also be a simplification in the process. Also note that when you're doing the payroll, you're going to be dealing with information and withholdings from the employees, and it can be worse if you can't pay or you mess up in terms of paying the taxes for the withholdings of employee wages, given the fact that now you're not paying just your own taxes, but you're basically taking money from the employees in essence and not paying that taxes. That can be worse than not paying your own taxes. Also note, of course, that the event of a lawsuit or something like that is one of the most likely places that could occur is from, an employee, unfortunately. So you want to make sure that you have all the records straight in the event that you got to deal with any kind of problems like that. So there are several benefits to filing these forms electronically. It saves time. Obviously, filing electronically can be a time saver. It's secure and accurate. I think that's them trying to tell you or trying to sell that it's secure and accurate. I think it is for the most part, but that's probably one of the biggest concerns that has stopped people from going online, filing things online, especially things like payroll. But clearly, the IRS is trying to get everything online at some point in time, and it's probably unavoidable to do a lot more work and submit a lot more information, even personal information, through the internet at this point. So the filer gets an email to confirm the IRS received the form within 24 hours. That's kind of nice because, it's good to make sure that, again, they got it, that we got things done the first time and we can move forward with it. There are two convenient ways business can e-file. Employers submitting the forms themselves will need to purchase IRS-approved software. There's a link to that here. There may be a fee to file electronically. Also, software will require a signature by one of two ways. The software instructs the user to apply for an online signature pin. There's a link to that here. Taxpayers should allow at least 45 days to receive their PIN. The user can scan and attach Form 8453 EMP Employment Tax Declaration for an IRS e-file return. There's a link to that here as well. Employers can have their tax professional file the form for them. The authorized IRS e-file providers for individuals and businesses, there's a link to that here, can help employers locate an electronic return organizer near them. There's a link to that here. Here are some of the forms employers can e-file. Form 940, the employer's annual federal unemployment tax return. So note, normally when you think about employment taxes or payroll taxes, you're thinking about usually the Form 941 and the 940. These things sound very similar in terms of the form because the form number is quite closely related, but they're pretty different. In essence, the 941 usually needing to be filed quarterly, and that's going to be reporting the federal income tax that you withhold from the employee, the employer, and employee portion of Social Security and Medicare that you're going to be taking out of the wages. You'll be doing that as you pay the employees, and then you got to file the informational reform to tell the IRS, hey, look, this is how much we owed, and this is how much we paid, and hopefully those things too lined up with the Form 941. Then the form at the end of the year, which you would think would kind of sum up the quarterly stuff, but that's not really what it does. Instead, it's reporting the federal unemployment tax. That's another tax that you have to deal with. Usually that one's going to be paid by the employer. You don't have to put that on the quarterly forms Probably because it's a lot smaller of a tax. Therefore, the IRS is saying, hey, you don't have to report this to us quarterly. You can just report it at the end of the year. So the 940 is at the end of the year only and not a quarterly form. So the employer's use of this form to report annual Federal Unemployment Tax Act tax. Form 941, employer's quarterly federal tax return. So that's the quarterly one, the 941 standard quarterly returns. Employers use this form to report income tax, Social Security tax, or Medicare tax withheld from employees' paychecks. They also use it to pay their portion of Social Security and Medicare tax. Form 943, employer's annual federal tax return for agricultural employees. Employers file this form if they paid wages to one or more farm workers and the wages were subject to Social Security and Medicare taxes or federal income tax withholding. We've got the Form 944, employer's annual federal tax return. Small business employers use this form, so you might use this instead of the Form 941 if your income is below this threshold. The IRS basically saying, hey, we're not going to worry about you filing quarterly. Since your income is below this threshold, you just have to do it annually. So instead of the Form 941 quarterly return, you've got the Form 944 annual return. So these are employers whose annual liability for Social Security, Medicare, and withheld federal income taxes is $1,000 or less. These employers use this form to file and pay these taxes only once a year instead of every quarter. And then we have the Form 945, annual return of withheld federal income tax. Employers use this form to report federal income tax withheld from non-payroll payments. So there's a link to all this great forms and other stuff here. And there'll be a link to this in the description